Some shocking news. Shout out to Marcus Bell. He had sent me this earlier, about a few hours ago, and it was from fightbananas.com. An interview done by fightbananas.com of Felicia Spencer. And shocking news, man. Shocking news. Felicia Spencer, former featherweight contender, announced her retirement today. She announced her retirement from the game. She's done with it. She wants to, she wanted to get out at a reasonable age, and she wants to focus, more on her mental health. Much like, we talked about Roxanne the other day. She said she's pretty much done whatever she's wanted to do. And, she's done competing now. She's done competing, and, she wants to move on now. And so let's go ahead and read through the article here. So this is what she had to say. I have decided to stop pursuing this opportunity and have no intention to continue fighting. I felt as good as I've ever been in my last fight. And I know I could have had more great performances, but after 18 fights, including a few years, I know in my heart for my future mental health that I shouldn't be in more of those wars. All right. So she said, I'll read it again. She said, I have decided to stop pursuing this opportunity and I have no intention to continue fighting. I felt as good as I ever been in my last fight and know I could have more great performances, but after 18 fights, including a few wars, I know in my heart for my future health that I shouldn't be in more of those wars. In the fight game, that isn't guaranteed, and I've showed myself that I won't give up in the cage, so I need to protect myself by not just stepping in there. I'm thinking about myself and family 25 years from now. Mental health is an important consideration in my family. All right. I mean, you couldn't have really said it any better, right? You really can't say it any better right now, especially like she said, for a fighter at her age. She's been doing this since her 20s, and, she's going to be, getting up in age pretty soon. 31, of course, that's kind of like prime year for an MMA fighter, like I said. But if you've been in wars and you've been tested, throughout your 20s, you've been going back and forth a few times and you have a high record like she does, 18 fights, age will start to catch up on you. Age will start to catch up on you. And 31 for her, I think it is time for her to go. If she feels that way, you know what I mean? Like she said, she competed on the highest level. She's fought the best. She's like she said, some of those fights were wars, and she's competed at the highest level she felt like she could reach, Nunes and Cyborg, right? So she competed at that level. There's really no need to go on anymore, right? Especially when you think of the future. And that's why I talked about, my Roxy video I did a few days ago. Like, people have to understand, like, this is a young man and young woman sport. This is a sport where you have to think of the future. You know what I mean? You have to think of the future. You have to think of your end game. What's your major goal? Like, what do you really want out of the sport? Do you just want to go in there, get pounded in the hamburger every night? Or do you really want to go in there and make a brand for yourself, exit the game as one of the best? Do you want to be seen as somebody that's like a true martial artist, or do you want to just be seen as a brawler? You know what I mean? That's why they call this mixed martial arts, because it is the sport of showing who the best mixed martial artist is. That's why when people talk about a fighter going in there and making fights one-sided and being just too dominant or being boring like that, they don't understand. Like, a true mixed martial artist doesn't give that person the edge. You know what I mean? This is still a game of chess. So the best chess player, they checkmate just like that without taking any type of punishment, right? That's what it's all about. It's making the right moves so you can exit the game as far as, in the octagon, in the business part, and you can come out the winner with the crown, right? Right? That makes sense, right? So for Felicia Spencer, she never got the crown, but at least she knows her level. Like, okay, I did try for it, and I have been in all these wars, or I have been in a few wars, and I have reached this certain level. But now that I know I'm getting to that age where I can't compete like I was when I was 23 or 24, it's time to go. It's time to go. She still sees it as like I said, like a school. It's like at college. You can't be a career student forever, right? You need to pick your career and get on with it, right? So she's probably said, okay, look, I've been here long enough. I've learned all I could learn. I've reached my highest level. I reached my ceiling. So let me go on to the next part of my life. That's what people have to understand. Fighting is not, it's not your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s and so on, right? You should go in it with the mind frame that it's a 20s thing and part of a 30s thing, but know that somewhere along that midpoint, you have to know what you're gonna do after the game, right? Like, am I gonna have enough money to support me? Am I gonna start saving my money? Am I gonna start saving those fight purses from 23 on to make sure I don't have to work anymore after 35 or something like that, right? Or am I going to just blow the money and then after that I'm going to have to make sure I have to have a second career afterwards, right? So there's a lot to think about there. There's a lot to think about because you never know. Even like she said, like, it's a gamble now. It could be a gamble now. Like, yeah, she made it out, but hey, what if she wants to come back for another fight and boom, she gets hurt? You know what I mean? Like, it could have happened early in her career. So now she's just like taking her chips and leaving. You know what I mean? She's taking her chips and leaving. She's not betting anymore because she said, hey, look, every day is a gamble. Every fight you take is a gamble. So you have to know when to walk away. And I think it's smart of her to just choose it now and say, look, it's time to go, right? Because it's not like she went in there and, you know, gave Amanda Nunes or Chris Cyborg the toughest fights. She took tough beatings, but she didn't give them the toughest fights where we could say, okay, she could get the belt one day, right? And she could possibly get that belt, like, if Nunes retires, but how long do you want to wait around? How much more punishment do you want to take? You know, if there really is no division and there's really no time period of when Amanda Nunes is leaving, right? So Felicia Spencer, when it all comes down to it, she's doing the right thing. She's doing the right thing if that's what her brain is telling her. If she's thinking about mental health now, when you start thinking about stuff like that, then yeah, it's time to go. Especially when that's something you really want to focus on. I think it's time for her to go. I think a lot of fighters should start thinking of that because it takes me back to even like boxers like Jermain Taylor, who stayed in for a while. The guy, you know, back in the day, he was a stand-up guy. You know, he was champion. But after he lost the belts to Kelly Pavlik, like back in 2007, his life just took a different road because he was taking a lot of punishment. Like in those two fights with Kelly Pavlik, Jeff Lacey fight, Carl Froch fight, Arthur Abraham fight. Like he took a lot of punishment throughout his career. And then I remember he suffered like a brain bleed. And from then he was just never the same person. Like shout out to my man Boxing P. We're supposed to do an episode just talking about Jermain Taylor. And as y'all know, he's been having a lot of trouble with the law throughout the past decade. You know what I mean? And that's a part of mental health that she's talking about. Sometimes these things can, like, you know, taking punishment, it can do something to your brain and turn you into a whole different person. You know what I mean? So mental health is very, very critical. It's very important. And if it's time to go, it's time to go. I think she's doing the right thing, man. But yeah, a lot of these fighters need to think that way. I'm glad Roxy is. She's seeing signs of it. JoJo Wood, I hope she sees the signs and say it might be time to go. Some of these other fighters that just go in there and take punishment with these records where they get beat down, they need to start rethinking things. And that's what we talk about over here. You know, that's why I talk about it over here on my channel, is the fact that these fighters, they got to stop thinking of just being a fighter. Like, they think that's all it's about. Like, oh, I'm going to fight till the day I die. Or, oh, this is what I do. What are you going to do for your family if you're in a wheelchair? Like, what are you going to do if your vision's impaired, if you lost your eyesight? Like, what are you going to do when they're taking care of you? What are you going to do when they have to spend their lives taking care of you? Do you want your family to have to take care of you and spoon feed you like that and have to have 24-hour care? No, like, you can't go in there thinking that way. Like, if this cuts back on the fight of the nights, then so be it. You know, if fighters want to listen to me and then they want to start fighting boring fights, fine. That's what it all comes down to. Like, when it really comes down to martial arts, like, if you want to see fight of the night, go to a club or something, start a fight. That's what it comes down to. Like, if you really want to see, like, people just throw down and just bust each other up and get cut up, hey, go down these streets sometimes. You know, you might actually, you get a ringside seat, or you actually might be fighting that night. You know what I mean? So that's what it comes down to. Like, to me, when it comes down to the skill of martial arts, I like to see the chess match. I like to see the performance where the fighter is trying to take the least amount of punishment. Now, I know they call this as a fight, but it's still a fight to stay disciplined. It's a fight to hold back. You know, it's a fight to hold back whenever your opponent gets the best of you once. and you have to reset and rethink your strategy. You know what I mean? Like, instead of letting go and just, taking 6 punches to give 1 or give 2, like, is that really worth it? No, why? It's time to reset and just rethink a strategy and just attack, with the perfect execution. That's what martial arts is to me. And I think if a lot of people taking that approach, then yeah, of course there would be less brain damage, but less damage done. But if you're not going to think that way in the meantime, these fighters out here, they have to kind of switch gears and say, I'm going to enjoy this now because, I can only do this for so long, but I got to think of the after. Like, okay, when am I going to get out of this? Because the slower I get, the more I'm going to get hit. If my defense ain't on point, I'm going to get hit more. So it's time to start thinking of an end game. Like, we got to. I brought this up with Miranda Maverick. Miranda Maverick, she said she doesn't see herself fighting well into her 30s either, so I can see her as a fighter that wants to go for the belt at some point, which is good. Like, that means she's probably working harder than the other fighters, right? It's good to say, hey, look, I have an end game. It's fighting Valentina, it's fighting her for the belt because I'm not a career fighter. You stick around and be a career fighter, who knows what's going to happen to you, right? So, again, it's just all about knowing your limit, knowing your ceiling. And I think that Felicia Spencer is making a good choice now. We've already seen her in there with 2 of the best fighters in the world, and we've seen what she could execute and what she couldn't, so why not? When it comes down to it, why not, right? So shout out to the phenom Felicia Spencer. Let's just kind of go down her resume here. We can look at some of her key fights here that put her on the map and made her one of the biggest threats. I mean, she had a good amateur career. She defeated Macy Chiasson, just so y'all know, in her amateur career. She was able to defeat Macy Chiasson. Then I remember when she hit the scene in Invicta, I was like, her very first fight was in Invicta, and she was like blowing through girls. Like, she brought this energy about her. She was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6-0 in Invicta. And that last fight was to win the featherweight title with a 4th round rear naked choke over Pam Bam Soros. And I remember watching that fight. Then she jumps into the UFC, makes her debut against Megan Anderson, chokes out Megan Anderson in 1 round. She put the pressure on her, earned that fight against Chris Cyborg. That was a 3-round fight, right? She fought Chris Cyborg, lost a lopsided decision. That was a big beating she took. Bounced back with a win over Zara Ferrer-Santos. And that was her last win. That was her last win of 2020, February 29, 2020. Zara Ferrer-Santos, she defeated in the first round. From there, she lost a lopsided decision to the champion, Amanda Nunes. And then she lost to Norma Dumont earlier this year. Okay, yeah. So she went 2 in a row. She lost 2 in a row. Then she won her last fight, which is the 3rd round stoppage over Leah Letson, who was also making her return after 3 years off. So that was her last fight, and that's what she wants to go out on, with a W. And I think for another reason is because there really is no direction in this featherweight division. Like, the featherweights just kind of fight. They kind of fight whoever. That really wasn't a good fight for Leah Letson. Leah Letson to come back in there after 3 years to fight a tough fighter like Felicia Spencer. That was a tough fight. That was too much of a fight for her. So that's an example of them just fighting, just out of order. Felicia Spencer, she's done her thing already. She's fought 2 of the best. She's fought all the featherweights pretty much in the game, that they have to offer. I mean, another choice would be to go to Bellator and go from there, but she doesn't want to do that. She just feels like, hey, my flame is gone. The UFC was a much higher level than Bellator to her. Even without the featherweight division, she could say she fought the best. So it's time to go. It's time to go, and that's how she feels. I mean, we never know, though. Sometimes fighters, they like to come back, but with her saying that off a win, I think it's a little bit more genuine. She's saying that off a win. I think that's a little bit more genuine on her side. But yeah, shout out to Felicia Spencer, though. With a record of 9-3, she's leaving the game, and she did give us some good fights. She definitely did. She could say she touched gold. She did win the belt from Invicta, won the featherweight belt there. So yeah, let me know in the comment section what y'all think, man. More fighters need to do that probably, though. For real. It's better than becoming a career fighter, and just sticking around and being a punching bag.